The distress beacon cut through the silence like a knife through butter. Danny Walsh had been hauling cargo through empty space for 3 weeks straight, and the sudden signal made him jump in his seat. He rubbed his tired eyes and checked the scanner twice to make sure he was not seeing things. The signal came from an old research station floating dead in space. Danny knew he should ignore it. Distress beacons in the lawless zones usually meant trouble. Pirates used fake signals to lure in good people who wanted to help. But something felt different about this one. The pattern was genuine, matching the emergency codes from legitimate facilities. Danny changed his course. His ship, the Windward Drift, was not fancy or fast, but it was reliable. He had owned it for 5 years, ever since he left military service. Back then, he had a full crew and big dreams. Now he flew alone, taking jobs that other haulers would not touch because they were too dangerous or too far from civilization. The research station grew larger on his screen. Debris floated around it like a cloud of metal insects. Panels had been torn from the hull. Scorch marks showed where fires had burned in the past. Whatever happened here was violent and quick. Danny put on his pressure suit and grabbed his tools. He docked his ship carefully, avoiding the floating wreckage. Inside the station, emergency lights flickered red and yellow. The air was thin but breathable. He turned on his helmet light and moved through the corridors. Bodies were absent, which was both good and bad. Good because Danny did not want to find corpses. Bad because it meant he had no idea what happened. The walls showed signs of a rushed evacuation. Doors were left open. Equipment was scattered on the floor. Someone had left in a terrible hurry. He found the main laboratory after 20 minutes of searching. The room was larger than the others, filled with broken computers and shattered glass tubes. Strange symbols covered the walls, written in languages Danny did not recognize. In the center of the room sat a single containment pod, still powered and humming quietly. Danny approached the pod slowly. Inside, curled into a small ball, was a creature he had never seen before. It looked reptilian, with scales that shimmered between blue and silver. Tiny wings, almost transparent, were folded against its back. The creature was wounded, with a deep cut along its side that had stopped bleeding but looked infected. The pod's display showed critical life signs. Whatever this creature was, it would die soon without help. Danny checked the station logs, hoping to find information about the specimen. The computer files were corrupted, deliberately erased. Only fragments remained. One file mentioned failed specimen and another said, disposal authorized. Someone had tried to kill this creature and hide the evidence. Danny looked at the small being in the pod. It was barely the size of a house cat. Its chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. One eye opened slightly, revealing a bright golden iris that seemed to look right into Danny's soul. The creature made a small sound, a soft chirp that reminded Danny of birds he used to hear on Earth. He knew the rules. Unknown. Xenobiological specimens were supposed to be reported to the authorities. Taking one without proper permits could land him in prison for years. But Danny also knew what happened to specimens marked for disposal. They were incinerated, treated as trash, their existence erased from official records. Danny made his decision quickly. He opened the pod and carefully lifted the creature out. It was surprisingly light, barely weighing more than a few pounds. The creature chirped again, louder this time, and tried to spread its damaged wings. Danny wrapped it gently in his jacket to keep it warm. Back on his ship, Danny set up a small area in the cargo hold. He used spare blankets and heating pads to create a comfortable nest. The creature settled into it immediately, its breathing becoming steadier. Danny found his medical kit and cleaned the wound as carefully as possible. He was not a doctor, but he had learned basic field medicine in the military. The creature watched him work with intelligent eyes. When Danny finished bandaging the injury, the creature chirped softly and touched its nose to his hand. The gesture seemed like gratitude. Danny smiled for the first time in months. He had been alone for so long that even this small interaction felt meaningful. "You need a name," he said quietly. The creature chirped in response, a quick pip-pip sound. "Pip, that works. Welcome aboard, little friend." As Danny prepared to leave the dead station, he checked the outer warning buoys. They were offline, their power cells drained years ago. He did not see the faded text on their surfaces, written in 47 different languages. The warnings all said the same thing, but time and space had worn the words away until they were almost invisible. If Danny had been able to read them, he would have learned that this sector was quarantined. He would have discovered that the research station was a containment facility. He would have understood that the creature sleeping peacefully in his cargo hold was not just any specimen, but the warnings were silent, and Danny was already plotting his course to the next trading post. He felt lighter somehow, less alone. Pip chirped softly from the cargo hold, and Danny found himself looking forward to the journey ahead. He had no idea that his life had just changed forever, or that the small creature he had saved would one day return the favor in the most extraordinary way possible. The windward drift jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the quarantine zone behind. In the cargo hold, Pip stretched his tiny wings and closed his golden eyes, finally safe and warm. 6 months changed everything in ways Danny never expected. Pip had grown from a tiny creature that fit in his jacket to something the size of a large dog. The cargo hold needed constant modifications to accommodate the growing dragon, though Danny still did not know exactly what Pip was. Every database search turned up nothing. Danny had checked xenobiology records from a dozen different worlds. He had compared Pip's features to thousands of known species. Nothing matched. The transparent wings, the shimmering scales, the way Pip's body temperature seemed to shift based on his surroundings. It was all unique. What surprised Danny most was how smart Pip had become. The dragon understood commands almost immediately. When Danny said lights off, Pip would retreat to his sleeping area and stay quiet. When Danny needed help moving cargo containers, Pip would push them with his head, careful not to damage anything with his growing strength. They developed routines together. Every morning, Danny would open the cargo hold door and Pip would bound out like an excited puppy. They would eat breakfast side by side, Danny with his ration packs and Pip with the raw meat Danny bought at various stations. Pip had a strange habit of heating his food with his breath before eating. Danny assumed it was just an unusual biological trait, nothing more. The hardest part was hiding Pip during station visits. Danny had become an expert at timing his docking procedures. He would wait until late cycles when fewer inspectors were working. He would file his cargo manifests in ways that discouraged random searches. Once, a young inspector had gotten curious and started walking toward the cargo hold. Danny had paid him 3 months of profits to look the other way. Other traders had started noticing changes in Danny. At the Frontier Exchange Station, a woman named Rita commented on his improved mood. "You seem different, Walsh, less angry at the universe." Danny had just shrugged. Maybe I found a reason to smile. He had not told anyone about Pip. How could he? He still did not know what Pip was, and unknowingly harboring an unregistered species could mean serious legal trouble. But every time he thought about reporting Pip to the authorities, he remembered those golden eyes looking at him from the containment pod. He remembered the desperation in that corrupted file. Disposal authorized. Some things were more important than following rules. The bond between them deepened over those months. Danny found himself talking to Pip about everything. He told stories about his time in the military, about the crew he had lost in an asteroid collision 3 years ago. He had never spoken about that tragedy to anyone, but somehow it felt safe to share with Pip. The dragon would listen, his head tilted slightly. Those intelligent eyes focused completely on Danny. Sometimes Pip would make soft rumbling sounds that felt like comfort. When Danny's voice broke remembering his lost friends, Pip would move closer and rest his head against Danny's leg. One night, after a particularly difficult delivery run, Danny sat in the cargo hold with Pip. He had been awake for 36 hours straight. His body ached and his mind felt foggy. Pip seemed to sense his exhaustion. The dragon curled around him, radiating warmth, creating a living blanket that helped Danny finally relax. "You're a good friend, Pip," Danny whispered. "Best one I've had in a long time." Pip's rumbling response vibrated through Danny's chest, steady as a heartbeat. The job offer came through Danny's encrypted communication channel. A medical facility on a frontier colony needed emergency supplies delivered within 2 weeks. The pay was exceptional, enough to cover ship repairs Danny had been postponing for months. The only problem was the route. Danny studied the star charts carefully. The fastest path went through a sector marked with unusual security warnings. Nothing specific, just vague advisories about increased enforcement presence and restricted biological scanning zones. Danny had been through plenty of security checkpoints before. As long as he kept Pip hidden in the shielded section of the cargo hold, everything would be fine. He accepted the job. Pip had grown again, now reaching the size of a small horse. The cargo hold modifications were becoming more elaborate. Danny had installed better ventilation, stronger support beams, and even a small viewing port so Pip could see the stars during travel. The dragon spent hours looking out at the endless space, his golden eyes reflecting distant suns. Sometimes Danny wondered what Pip was thinking. Did the dragon remember where he came from? Did he have instincts that told him he did not belong on a human cargo ship? If Pip's species was out there somewhere, did he miss them? But Pip never tried to leave. Every time Danny opened the outer airlock for cargo loading, Pip would stay put in his designated area. The dragon had chosen to stay, and that choice meant everything to Danny. They departed for the medical supply run on a quiet Tuesday. The ship hummed with familiar sounds as they entered faster-than-light travel. Danny checked all the systems twice, making sure the cargo hold's shielding was functioning perfectly. No scanners would detect Pip through those barriers. In the cargo hold, Pip settled into his sleeping area. He made his pip-pip chirping sound, the same noise he had made when Danny first found him. Over the months, Danny had learned to recognize different chirps. This one meant contentment, safety, home. Danny smiled and sealed the cargo hold door. "Sleep well, buddy. Just a routine run. We'll be there before you know it." He had no way of knowing that this journey would change everything. The route through the security sector would bring them face to face with dangers neither of them was prepared for. The secret of what Pip truly was would soon be revealed, and that revelation would transform them both from simple travelers into the galaxy's most wanted fugitives. But for now, in the peaceful silence of faster-than-light travel, they were just a man and his companion, heading toward the unknown together. Pirates were a fact of life in the nebula reaches, but Danny had always been lucky enough to avoid them. His luck ran out 3 days into the medical supply run. The attack came without warning. One moment Danny was checking navigation charts. The next moment alarms screamed through every speaker on the ship. A massive vessel had dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in front of him. The ship was ugly and patchwork, built from stolen parts and salvaged military equipment. Weapons bristled from every surface. Danny's hands flew across the controls trying to change course, but the pirate ship was faster. Tractor beams locked onto the windward drift and pulled it close like a fish on a hook. Danny slammed his fist against the console in frustration. There was no escape now. The boarding tube connected with a harsh clang. Danny heard cutting tools working on his airlock. He had maybe 2 minutes before they broke through. He ran to the cargo hold and found Pip awake and alert, sensing the danger. "Stay quiet," Danny ordered, guiding Pip into the shielded storage section. "No matter what happens, do not make a sound." Pip's golden eyes were wide with concern, but the dragon obeyed. Danny sealed the storage section just as the airlock door exploded inward. Heavy boots thundered through his ship. 5 pirates stormed in, weapons raised. They were a mixed group. 2 humans, a Talvine with 4 arms, and 2 other species Danny did not recognize. Leading them was the Talvine, a creature with mottled green skin and too many teeth. His voice came out as a hiss. "I am Dross. This ship now belongs to me." Danny raised his hands slowly. "Take whatever you want. The cargo's worth good money." "Oh, we will take everything," Dross said, his mouth splitting into a terrible smile. "Ship, cargo, and your life if you give us trouble." The pirates spread through the windward drift like locusts. They pawed through Danny's belongings, laughed at his modest living quarters, and started cataloging the medical supplies in the main cargo area. Danny's heart pounded as they moved closer to the shielded storage section. One of the human pirates, a woman with scars covering half her face, stopped in front of the sealed door. "What's in here?" "Emergency supplies," Danny lied. "Radiation-shielded equipment. Opening it without proper procedures will contaminate everything." The woman looked suspicious but moved on. Danny allowed himself to breathe. Maybe Pip would stay hidden. Maybe they would take what they wanted and leave. Then one of the younger pirates, barely more than a teenager, found the control panel Danny had installed for Pip's viewing port. The kid pressed buttons randomly, trying to figure out what it did. The shielding on the storage section flickered and died. Dross noticed immediately. His multiple eyes narrowed. "What do you have hidden in there, cargo hauler?" Before Danny could answer, Dross walked to the storage section and tore the door open with his 4 powerful arms. Inside, pressed against the back wall, was Pip. The dragon had grown so much that he barely fit in the space. His scales caught the light, shimmering between blue and silver. His wings, now the size of ship sails, were folded tightly against his body. The pirates froze. Several weapons clattered to the floor. The teenage pirate stumbled backward, his face pale with terror. The scarred woman made a sound like a prayer in a language Danny did not understand. Dross stared at Pip with all four of his eyes wide open. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "That is impossible." "What?" Danny asked, confused by their reaction. "He's just an exotic pet, harmless." "Harmless?" Dross turned to Danny, and for the first time the pirate leader looked genuinely afraid. "That is a flame worm, a dragon. They have been extinct for 800 years. The words hit Danny like a physical blow. Dragon. The mythical apex predators from ancient galactic history. The species that had nearly conquered known space before being eliminated in the scorching wars. He had read about them in history files, never imagining they were real. Dragons destroyed 17 civilizations before the Concordance stopped them, the scarred woman said. They could breathe fire hot enough to melt starship hulls. They could survive in the vacuum of space. Nothing could kill them except massive coordinated attacks. Danny looked at Pip, seeing his companion with new eyes. The gentle creature who chirped and played, who comforted Danny during dark moments, who had never hurt anyone. That was a dragon? Pip seemed to sense the tension in the room. He made his familiar pip-pip sound, trying to communicate that he meant no harm. But to the pirates, the sound triggered ancient instincts of fear. "There is a bounty," Dross said slowly, recovering his composure. "The Galactic Concordance pays millions for proof of draconic life. They have kill-on-sight orders for any dragon anywhere." The pirates began arguing among themselves. Some wanted to kill Pip immediately and collect the bounty. Others wanted to capture him alive, which would be worth even more. The teenage pirate argued they should just leave, that nothing was worth the risk of facing a dragon. Danny's hand moved slowly toward the emergency release for the cargo hold. If he could create enough chaos, maybe he could protect Pip somehow. But before he could act, Pip made his choice. The dragon's throat glowed orange. Heat rippled through the air. Every pirate felt it and knew what was coming. Pip opened his mouth and released fire for the first time. The burst was controlled and precise. Nothing like the world-burning flames from ancient stories. The fire destroyed 3 weapons and melted a hole in the bulkhead, but it hurt no one. Pip was not trying to kill. He was making a statement: touch Danny and there would be consequences. The pirates ran. They scrambled over each other, trying to escape back to their ship. Dross was the last to leave, backing away slowly. His weapons pointed at Pip, but his hands shaking too badly to fire. "This is not over, cargo hauler," Dross hissed. "The Concordance will hear about this. They will hunt you to the edges of the galaxy, you and your monster both." The pirates disconnected their boarding tube and fled. Their ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel within seconds. Danny stood in the damaged cargo hold, surrounded by melted metal and the lingering smell of fire. His whole world had changed in minutes. Pip approached slowly, carefully. The dragon lowered his massive head until it was level with Danny's chest. Those golden eyes held a question. Would Danny reject him now that the truth was known? Danny reached out and touched Pip's scaled snout. "I don't care what they say you are. You're my friend. We're going to figure this out together." Pip's rumbling response vibrated through the ship, but as Danny started plotting an escape route, he knew their peaceful life was over. The hunt had begun, and they were now the most wanted beings in the galaxy. 3 months of running felt like 3 years. Danny had become someone he barely recognized. His face appeared on wanted bulletins across 50 star systems. The charges included harboring a galactic threat, evading Concordance authority, and endangering public safety. The bounty on his head grew larger each week. Living as a fugitive meant constant movement. Danny could not use official trade routes anymore. He navigated through asteroid fields and nebula clouds where sensors did not work properly. He took jobs from criminals and outcasts, people who did not ask questions and did not report to authorities. The money was terrible, but it kept them supplied with fuel and food. Pip had grown too large for the cargo hold interior. The dragon now measured 20 feet from nose to tail, with wings that could span 40 feet when fully extended. Danny had modified the hold completely, removing most of the cargo space to give Pip room to move. Transparent panels along the walls let them see each other during flight. The hardest part was watching Pip cope with confinement. Dragons were meant to fly free through space, not be trapped in metal boxes. Pip never complained, never showed anger, but Danny could see the sadness in those golden eyes. It broke his heart. During one of their stops at a hidden asteroid base, Danny met a Velrani scholar named Istara, who traded in forbidden information. She sold him access to restricted historical archives, files the Concordance had tried to erase. Danny spent nights reading, learning the truth about dragons. The stories were nothing like the official versions. Dragons had not been mindless destroyers. They had been explorers and philosophers, a civilization older than most current spacefaring species. They had superior technology and lived for thousands of years. Their ability to survive in vacuum and travel between stars without ships had made them powerful. But power created fear. When territorial disputes arose between dragons and the expanding Concordance, fear turned to hatred. The Concordance convinced other species that dragons were a threat to all life. The scorching wars began not because dragons attacked, but because the Concordance struck first. The genocide took 50 years. Dragons were hunted across the galaxy. Their worlds were burned. Their young were killed in their nests. The Concordance claimed it was necessary for the survival of all other species. By the time the wars ended, dragons were declared extinct, except one had survived. Somehow, impossibly, Pip existed. Danny wondered if the research station where he found Pip had been trying to recreate dragons or if they had found a preserved egg. The corrupted files held no answers. All Danny knew was that Pip was alone, the last of his kind, hunted for crimes he never committed. The knowledge made Danny more determined to protect him. They survived close calls that should have ended them. Concordance patrol ships nearly caught them twice. Bounty hunters tracked them to a moon colony, and Danny had to abandon cargo worth months of profits to escape. Once, hiding in a debris field, they watched a massive Concordance warship pass within 100 meters. So close Danny could see the crew through the viewports. Through it all, Pip remained gentle. Despite his size and power, despite the fire he could breathe and the strength in his claws, Pip never used his abilities unless Danny was in direct danger. The dragon had learned restraint from watching Danny, had adopted human values of compassion and measured response. Other fugitives noticed. Word spread through underground networks about the man and the dragon, who could have destroyed their pursuers but chose mercy instead. Some offered help. A group of Zelran smugglers provided false identification codes. A human named Rudy, who ran a repair station in an unmapped system, fixed their ship for free. An old woman on a colony world slipped Danny food supplies and wished them luck. Not everyone was kind. Some tried to betray them for the bounty. Others feared what Pip represented and attacked on sight. Danny learned to trust few people and sleep lightly. During their time together, Pip began trying to communicate more clearly. The dragon would use his claws to draw symbols on the cargo hold floor. Simple pictures at first, stars, ships, Danny's face, then more complex ideas. Pip drew what looked like a family of dragons flying together through space. He drew Danny standing among them, accepted and welcomed. Danny understood. Pip was trying to show him what might have been if the dragons had survived. A future where different species coexisted, where Danny and Pip would not have to hide. Maybe someday, Danny would say, though he did not really believe it. The emergency that changed everything happened near a frozen moon in an uncharted system. Danny was repairing damaged engines when Concordance ships appeared. 3 of them in perfect attack formation. Someone had betrayed their location. Danny launched immediately, engines still malfunctioning. The windward drift shook and groaned as it struggled to reach escape velocity. Weapons fire lit up the space around them. One blast hit their port thruster, sending the ship spinning. Pip roared from the cargo hold. The dragon wanted to help, to break free and fight, but doing so would expose him to vacuum before his body was ready. Danny had read that young dragons needed time to develop their space survival abilities. Pip was only a year old, still practically an infant by dragon standards. "Stay inside," Danny shouted over the alarm. "I'll get us out of this." He did not get them out. Another weapons hit destroyed the navigation systems. The ship spiraled out of control toward the frozen moon. Danny fought the controls, managed to slow their descent enough that the crash did not kill them immediately. The windward drift plowed into ice and rock, tearing itself apart. When the world stopped spinning, Danny found himself trapped in the cockpit. Metal had bent around him like a cage. His left arm was clearly broken. Blood ran from a cut on his head, freezing in the thin atmosphere. He could hear Pip in the ruined cargo hold struggling against debris. The dragon was alive but trapped like Danny, unable to break free without bringing the whole wreck down on both of them. Through the cracked viewport, Danny saw the Concordance ships landing nearby. Soldiers in environment suits emerged, weapons ready. They had won. After 3 months of running, it was finally over. Danny tried to reach the emergency beacon, hoping to send one final message, but his working arm could not stretch far enough. He looked toward where Pip was trapped and felt tears freeze on his face. "I'm sorry, buddy," he whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't keep you safe." Pip's answering roar shook the wreckage, but there was nothing either of them could do. The soldiers were coming, and this time there would be no escape. Concordance soldiers pulled Danny from the wreckage with rough efficiency. His broken arm screamed in pain, but they showed no sympathy. They dragged him across the ice to a waiting transport, while others worked to extract Pip from the destroyed cargo. "Hold." Danny watched helplessly as they brought specialized equipment, designed for containing dragons. Neural suppressors that caused agonizing pain without leaving physical damage. Massive tranquilizer guns loaded with enough sedative to drop a creature 10 times Pip's size. Reinforced nets made from materials that could withstand dragon fire. Pip fought them. The dragon managed to free himself from the wreckage and faced the soldiers with fire building in his throat. For a moment, Danny thought Pip might actually escape. The dragon was powerful enough to burn through their ranks and fly away. But Pip hesitated. His golden eyes found Danny among the soldiers, saw the weapons pressed against his companion's head. The dragon understood the threat. If he fought back, they would kill Danny immediately. Pip lowered his head in surrender. The soldiers activated the neural suppressors. Pip's roar of pain cut through Danny like knives. The dragon collapsed, his whole body shaking from the agony. They hit him with tranquilizers next. Enough drugs to kill a lesser creature. Pip's eyes grew unfocused, but even sedated and suffering, he kept looking at Danny until the very end. They loaded Pip into a specialized containment ship, a vessel built specifically for transporting dangerous specimens. The reinforced hull could withstand dragon fire. The interior was filled with neural suppressors that would keep Pip in constant pain if he tried to resist. Danny watched them seal his friend inside that torture chamber and felt something break inside himself. A Concordance officer approached Danny. She was Velrani, with pale purple skin and 3 eyes that held no warmth. Her uniform displayed the rank of commander. "I am Istrix," she said. "You have committed serious crimes against the Concordance and all civilized species." "He never hurt anyone," Danny said through gritted teeth. "Pip is peaceful. He only used his fire to protect me." "One dragon nearly destroyed 17 civilizations," Istrix replied coldly. "We cannot risk sentiment over safety. The creature will be taken to a research facility where we will study it before executing it humanely. You will be imprisoned for life." Danny tried to lunge at her despite his injuries. Soldiers held him back easily. "He has a name. He's not just a creature. Pip is intelligent and kind. He's better than any of you." "Dragons are excellent mimics," Istrix said. "It learned to act domesticated to ensure its survival. Do not mistake manipulation for genuine emotion." They dragged Danny to a different ship, a prison transport. Through the viewport, he could see Pip's containment vessel. For one brief moment, their eyes met across the distance. Danny saw intelligence in Pip's gaze, understanding and sorrow. The dragon knew they were being separated. He knew what was coming. Danny pressed his hand against the viewport. "I will find you. I promise. I will find a way to save you." Then Pip's ship powered up and began moving away. Danny watched until it disappeared into the black, his hand still pressed against the cold glass. Inside the prison transport, they locked Danny in a small cell. His arm was set roughly by a medical robot, no pain medication provided. They left him alone in the dark with only his thoughts and guilt. He had failed Pip. After everything they had been through together, Danny had failed when it mattered most. Hours passed. Danny could hear activity outside his cell. Voices arguing, getting louder. He pressed his ear against the door and listened. It was Dross. The pirate had arrived to collect his payment for providing information about their location. The betrayal cut deep, though Danny should have expected it. Dross had sworn revenge after their first encounter, but the argument was not going well. Istrix refused to pay the full bounty. She claimed the capture was a joint effort between Dross's information and Concordance tracking. The pirate deserved only a percentage. Dross's voice rose in anger. We had a deal, Concordance scum. I provided exact coordinates. I took the risk of approaching that monster. You will accept what we offer or receive nothing, Istrix replied coolly. The argument escalated into a standoff. Danny heard weapons being drawn. Soldiers shouted orders. The careful alliance between the Concordance and the pirate had collapsed into chaos. Danny saw his chance. He kicked at his cell door. Once, twice. The lock was electronic and strong, but the frame was standard construction. On the third kick, using his good leg with all his strength, the frame cracked. 2 more kicks and he was free. The corridor was empty. Everyone focused on the confrontation in the main bay. Danny ran, his broken arm hanging useless, his body screaming in pain. He found an equipment room and grabbed a pressure suit. Alarms began blaring as someone noticed his escape. Danny reached the escape pod bay as soldiers rounded the corner. They opened fire. Plasma bolts burned past him, one grazing his shoulder. He dove into the nearest pod and slammed the emergency launch button. The pod ejected violently. More weapons fire struck its hull, tearing through systems. Red lights flashed warning messages. Hull integrity failing, life support damaged, navigation offline. But Danny was free of the ship. He was moving away from his captors, drifting into the dark space near the frozen moon. He tried to steer toward Pip's containment ship, hoping desperately to reach it somehow, but the pod had no power left for maneuvering. Through the pod's small viewport, Danny could see both ships now. The prison transport where he had been held, the containment vessel carrying Pip away. They were moving in opposite directions, the distance between them growing with every second. Danny fumbled with the communication system. Most of it was destroyed, but he managed to activate one emergency beacon. He aimed it toward the containment ship and transmitted everything he felt, everything he wanted to say. I'm sorry, Pip. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. You deserved better than this. You deserved to fly free like your ancestors. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for teaching me I could care about someone again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The transmission ended. The pod's power died completely. Life support systems failed one by one. The cold of space began seeping through the damaged hull. Danny's breath became visible in the freezing air. He was dying, floating alone in the dark, bleeding and broken. Danny watched the stars through the viewport. He thought about Pip trapped in that containment ship, suffering and afraid. He wished he could have done more. He wished he could have been stronger. His eyes grew heavy. The cold did not hurt anymore. Everything felt distant and soft. In his last conscious moments, Danny thought he heard something. A sound like thunder rolling across impossible distances. A roar that shook space itself. Then darkness took him and Danny Walsh knew nothing more. Pip was conscious despite the drugs flooding his system. Dragons metabolized chemicals differently than other species. What should have kept him sedated for days only dulled his mind slightly. The neural suppressors hurt terribly, sending waves of pain through every nerve. But Pip had learned to endure pain. What he could not endure was feeling Danny's life fading like a candle flame in strong wind. The bond between them had formed slowly over months of companionship. Pip had not understood it at first. Dragons bonded with others of their kind, not with different species. But Danny had saved him, cared for him, loved him when the rest of the galaxy wanted him dead. That love had created something new, a connection that transcended species and space. Through that bond, Pip felt everything. He felt Danny's fear during the crash. He felt Danny's pain during the interrogation. He felt Danny's desperation during the escape. And now, drifting in the frozen dark, Pip felt Danny dying. Ancient instincts awakened inside Pip's mind. Memories that were not his own but belonged to his species. Dragons had once flown freely through the cosmos, protecting those they loved with absolute devotion. They had been capable of impossible things when protecting their chosen companions. Pip's eyes snapped open, fully alert. The guards in the containment ship did not notice. They assumed he was unconscious. The dragon's body began to change. His scales hardened, becoming armor instead of skin. His internal temperature rose far beyond normal levels, burning away the remaining drugs in his system. Energy built in his muscles. Power he had never accessed before because he had never needed it. The neural suppressors activated at full strength, trying to stop what was happening. The pain was beyond description, but Pip pushed through it. Danny needed him. Nothing else mattered. Pip opened his mouth and released fire hotter than anything he had produced before. The flames melted through his restraints instantly. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Guards rushed into the containment area, weapons raised. Pip did not want to hurt them. These were not evil people, just soldiers following orders. He released another burst of fire, carefully aimed, destroying their weapons without harming flesh. The guards ran, terrified and smart enough to know they could not stop a fully awakened dragon. The containment ship's hull was reinforced, built to hold dragons, but Pip's ancestors had broken free of stronger prisons. He slammed his body against the walls repeatedly. Metal groaned and buckled. The ship's systems began failing as power conduits shattered under the assault. One final impact and the hull tore open. Vacuum rushed in, claiming the ship. Pip spread his wings and launched himself into space. The cold hit him immediately. Space was far colder than any moon or planet. But dragon biology was ancient and sophisticated. Pip's scales locked together, creating an airtight barrier. His lungs shifted, extracting oxygen from his own blood in a closed system. His wings extended energy membranes, thin fields that let him maneuver using solar wind and electromagnetic forces. For the first time in his life, Pip flew free in the vacuum as his ancestors had done. Under different circumstances, it would have been glorious. But there was no time to appreciate freedom. Danny was dying. The bond guided Pip through the dark. He could feel Danny's location like a compass pointing home. The distance was enormous, over 1,000,000 kilometers, but Pip did not hesitate. He flew faster than he had known he could, pushing his young body to limits that should have destroyed him. Solar radiation burned his scales. Micrometeors tore through his wings. The energy cost of maintaining life in vacuum drained him rapidly. But Pip flew on, driven by love and desperation. Hours passed. Pip's body screamed for rest. The bond grew weaker as Danny's life faded further. The dragon roared into the silence of space, a sound that shook reality itself, trying to tell Danny to hold on just a little longer. Finally, Pip saw it, a tiny escape pod tumbling slowly through the dark, its hull damaged and cold. No lights, no power, no signs of life. Pip approached carefully. The pod was so small compared to him now. He extended his claws, trying to grip it gently, terrified he might accidentally crush the fragile metal. His first attempt failed, claws scraping harmlessly off the frozen surface. He tried again, slower, more controlled. This time his claws found purchase. Pip held the pod containing his dying friend and wanted to weep. But dragons had no tears, only fire and determination. Pip could not enter the pod. He was far too large, and opening it in vacuum would kill Danny instantly. But he could help. The dragon wrapped his body around the pod as much as possible, and released heat in controlled waves. Not fire, just pure warmth, slowly raising the pod's temperature without melting it. Inside, frozen systems began to thaw. Power cells that had shut down from cold flickered back to life. Life support restarted, fighting to stabilize the dying human inside. But where could Pip take Danny? The Concordance would find them eventually. Danny needed medical care immediately, care that Pip could not provide. The answer came from an old memory, something Danny had mentioned months ago. A smuggler named Rudy who had helped them once. Danny had mentioned the location casually, never knowing Pip was listening and remembering. Pip adjusted his course and flew toward that distant station, cradling the pod carefully. The journey took another 3 hours. By the time the smuggler station appeared ahead, Pip's strength was nearly gone. His scales were cracked and bleeding. His wings were torn. His body was shutting down from the strain of maintaining life in vacuum for so long. But he had succeeded. Danny was still alive and help was close. Pip descended toward the station's landing platform. Smugglers poured out, weapons ready, faces shocked at seeing a dragon. Pip ignored their fear. He carefully set the pod down as gently as he could, then backed away, collapsing from exhaustion. Through failing eyes, Pip watched the smugglers approach. One of them, an older human with gray hair, stepped forward. This was Rudy. Pip recognized him from surveillance footage Danny had shown him. Rudy looked at the pod, then at Pip. Understanding dawned on his weathered face. "You saved him," Rudy said quietly. "You risked everything to save him." Pip managed a small nod. His golden eyes pleaded, "Help him. Please help him." Rudy shouted orders. Smugglers rushed to extract Danny from the pod. A medic arrived with equipment. They worked frantically, and Pip watched through the exhaustion, unable to move but needing to see that Danny would survive. Minutes felt like years. Finally, the medic looked up and nodded. "He's alive. Barely, but alive. We can stabilize him." Pip released a breath he had not realized he was holding. His eyes closed. He had done it. Danny would live. The smugglers carefully moved Danny inside to their medical bay. Pip wanted to follow but could not move. His body had nothing left to give. He lay on the cold platform, content to rest now that Danny was safe. Rudy approached again and gently touched Pip's scaled snout. "We'll take care of him, Dragon. You have my word. And we'll take care of you too." Through the station's windows, Pip could see Danny in the medical bay. Machines beeped and flashed. The medic worked quickly, repairing damage and stabilizing vital signs. Danny's heart, which had stopped, started beating again. Days passed in a blur. Pip recovered slowly, his draconic healing abilities working to repair the damage from his impossible journey. The smugglers treated him with cautious respect, providing food and water, giving him space. Danny woke on the third day. The first thing he saw was a screen showing Pip outside, sleeping in the sun. The dragon looked terrible, covered in healing scars, his wings still torn but alive. "He came for you," Rudy said, standing beside the medical bed. "Flew through space itself to save you. Never seen anything like it. That dragon loves you more than most people love their own families." Danny tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Rudy helped him drink water. When Danny could finally talk, his voice was rough but determined. "I need to see him." They helped Danny to the window. He was still weak, barely able to stand, but he pressed his hand against the glass. Outside, Pip's eyes opened. Those golden eyes found Danny immediately, and the dragon's whole body relaxed with relief. Danny smiled through tears. "You saved me, buddy. You did the impossible." Pip made his familiar pip-pip sound, and despite everything, Danny laughed. Over the following weeks, both of them healed. The smugglers shared news from the wider galaxy. Recordings of Pip's escape had leaked to independent networks. People across hundreds of worlds had watched the dragon carefully disable weapons without killing, had seen him risk everything to save one human life. Public opinion was shifting. Not everywhere, not quickly, but changing nonetheless. Questions were being asked. If dragons were truly mindless destroyers, why had this one chosen mercy? Why had it saved instead of killed? The Concordance still hunted them. But now there were voices calling for restraint, for reconsideration, for the possibility that the ancient genocide had been wrong. Danny and Pip could never return to normal life, but they did not need to. Together they left the smuggler station on a new ship, a gift from Rudy and his people. Pip flew alongside in the vacuum, free and magnificent. They headed toward unexplored space beyond Concordance reach, toward a future they would build together, a human and a dragon, bound by love stronger than fear, proving that understanding could bridge any difference. Behind them, the galaxy slowly learned that some old hatreds needed to die, and some ancient friendships needed to be reborn.